James Richardson is a conservative columnist, a former spokesperson for the Republican National Committee, and for former Governor Haley Barbour of Mississippi and Utah's John Huntsman. He joins me from Atlanta. Thanks for being with us, James.
Thank you for having me, Larry.
Let's start. What do you make of Trump? I'll quote something you recently said on MSNBC. I don't believe that at the end of the day, America wants as a president a man who is going to need to consult Wikipedia in national security briefings. What do you make of this whole Trump candidacy?
Well, according to the most recent data, about half of Republican primary voters consider service in government actually a disqualifying credential for this nomination. And CBS and New York Times had a survey out last week that found only 9% of primary voters are actually looking for a candidate with service in government. So it's clear that outsiders, such as Donald Trump, have really tapped into this very real, very pervasive anti-government sentiment, and it's buoying him right now. But I think you're going to start to see his numbers dip as voters really become more aware of Donald Trump's policies, because Donald Trump is not a Republican. He only plays one on TV.
Some are saying that Trump's popularity is a barometer of a growing anger by conservatives that Americans are lost to liberal ideology. Others are saying that it's anger at the Republican establishment for not doing more.
You're absolutely right that conservatives are angry. But I would submit that voters of all political orientation are angry right now. There's broad dissatisfaction among moderates, independents, and even Democrats with the state of our country right now. You know, conservatives are no more angry today, 7 years into the presidency of Barack Obama, than progressives were 7 years into the presidency of George W. Bush. There's real anticipation for change today in the same way that there was among Democrats 8 years ago. I don't think that it's any kind of unique hatred or anger among Republicans.
Does it worry you that the three leading pollsters are all never elected officials?
It does worry me, but not too much, because right now we're many long months from actual balloting. What you find in the early nominating process is that voters follow their hearts and not their heads. But soon, these candidates are going to start to fade. I don't need to remind you that there was a season in the 2008 campaign in which Mitt Romney was actually trailing a candidate whose sole credential was that he ran a bad pizza company and could count to 9. So these things have a way of working themselves out. These outsider candidates fall because they lack the resources, and voters soon realize that they don't have fluency in policy issues that really matter to them.
James, you're well aware of the Republican situation. What happened to Scott Walker?
Scott Walker entered this race with such great promise because he could unite both movement conservatives and establishment Republicans. You know, this is a candidate who, in the space of 4 years, won 3 elections in a blue state. So you can see how that would be deeply appealing to establishment Republicans whose lunch have been getting eaten by Democrats for 8 years now. The problem for Scott Walker is that he began reading his press clippings, and he began internalizing that narrative and eventually fell victim to it. So in the case of Walker, pundits and press said that he was a new sort of Republican, capable of remaking the party, winning in a blue state, and governing by consensus. The moment Scott Walker began believing that he was this special Republican, the only sort of Republican that could win nationally, that he had been almost ordained to save the party, is the moment that he lost.
How did he win in that blue state when it seemed to viewers he lacked luster?
Well, it's a Midwestern state. It's Midwestern voters. He clearly connected with blue-collar voters out there. This is a guy who rode his Harley. You know, people appreciate his courage in standing up to the unions, in standing up for what he believes, and that clearly resonated there in a way that it apparently didn't resonate nationally.
The Democrats are not attacking each other. The Republicans are. Why?
Well, it's a totally different dynamic. I would compare the dynamic today to the dynamic for Democrats in 2008. You know, it was Hillary Clinton's campaign who planted the seeds of doubt that Barack Obama was a Muslim. It was Hillary Clinton who said that Barack Obama was a doe-eyed naif who should not be trusted to answer the red phone at 3 a.m. So the sort of divisiveness you're seeing now is not different than the divisiveness you witnessed in 2008 with Democrats. It's the same sort of dynamic. It's a party anxious to get into the White House. People are playing for keeps.
Good assessment.
Politics ain't beanbag, as you know.
Yeah. All right. Jeb Bush, what do you make? He hasn't run for office in 13 years. Is he a little rusty? It doesn't seem to have taken off. What do you make of the Jeb Bush campaign to this date?
Well, I think he has been rusty, but Jeb's campaign, his strategy all along has been a long burn. I'm supporting Jeb Bush. He has a very deeply appealing record for me on everything from life to taxes, job growth. It's one that resonates with me, and I think it'll resonate with voters as well. He cut taxes by $19 billion in Florida. He overhauled Medicaid. He signed in one of the largest tort reform packages in the country. This is a guy who is comfortable in this diverse field not being voters' first choice. He is, however, voters' second and third choice. And as these first and second choices begin to fade from contention, Jeb's going to be there to pick up the pieces. His stock's going to rise, and so too will his poll numbers. And that's been his strategy all along, because he has the resources to make this a long game. He has the resources to run a slow burn throughout summer and fall and be there waiting for his rivals, 14 other rivals now, to burn out. And he can do that in a way that other campaigns can't.
Former Congressman Connie Mack, who's one of his supporters as well, said he hopes that it's a Bush-Clinton race, that he thought that it would be a race based on issues, that the debates would be healthy, they would be issue-driven, that it would be an above-board campaign, that there wouldn't be mudslinging, and that America would be better for it. Do you share that?
I do. Jeb Bush is a man who understands policy. You know, if you have Jeb Bush up there instead of Donald Trump, we're actually going to be talking about issues and not personality. We're not going to be debating whether or not a debate moderator was unfair. We're going to be talking about issues that affect a single mother trying to feed and clothe her two children, not someone's dispute with a TV personality.
We'll continue the conversation with conservative columnist James Richardson right after the break. This month you tweeted, "A year ago I made the craziest decision of my life by coming out." You came out in the Washington Post. You said only one party got angry. Who was that?
It was the Democratic Party. I'd braced for a very harsh reception by Republicans, my party, but I was really surprised and almost hurt to find that it was Democrats who had the harshest response to this.
Saying what?
Well, thousands of commenters all over the internet were wishing me harm, death, emotional pain. You know, they regard me as the enemy simply because I believe government should run lean, that growth in the economy is driven by the private sector and not by bureaucrats. I am confident in my career and my advocacy. Years before I ever came out professionally, I was a very vocal public advocate for LGBTQ equality measures. I worked for gay rights organizations. I spent my Saturdays during the 2008 campaign delivering food to people with HIV and AIDS. But somehow I'm the enemy. And my question for my Democratic critics would be, how do you think this dynamic is going to change if people aren't advocating and agitating for change from within? I fully recognize that the Republican Party, my party, has caused great heartache in the gay community. Lives have been threatened, jobs have been lost, marriages have been denied, but people like me have been working to change that.
But the Democratic Party has been in the forefront of helping the LGBT community.
Only recently, it wasn't until 2013 that Hillary Clinton actually supported marriage equality. It wasn't until recently that President Barack Obama supported marriage equality. You know, change happens very slowly and then very suddenly. And that's what you saw in the Democratic Party. It took a really long time for the Democratic Party to get where it is today. It's going to take the Republican Party a similarly long time to move. It will move, though. It's happening slowly. You saw in the recent Supreme Court case, you had over 300 prominent Republicans sign an amicus brief to the United States Supreme Court urging for the freedom to marry. That's progress.
Do any of the Republican candidates support marriage equality?
I don't believe that they do.
Doesn't that hurt you personally?
Personally, it does hurt me, but the decision has already been made by the United States Supreme Court, and candidates such as Jeb Bush have said, rightly, this is settled. We need to move on respectfully, acknowledging our differences, but realizing that these are human beings that we're talking about. These are real-life relationships, people with children that we're talking about. And it's time to move on as a country and to heal and to grow together.
But as a Republican, someone like a Mike Huckabee, doesn't that pain you to see him up there supporting Kim Davis when that day she came out of jail?
It does, but, you know, I don't take Mike Huckabee seriously. He has no possible chance at winning this nomination. I have a better chance of becoming the Pope than Mike Huckabee does at becoming the nominee for the Republican Party. And the same is true of Rick Santorum. These are people who are not going to be the face of my party, and I'm confident and certain and secure in that knowledge.
What do you make of the United States? I think we're proposing now 100,000 refugees. Do you think that creates a jihadist pipeline, or do you think the humanitarians should take hold?
This is a real humanitarian crisis. We're talking about the largest human displacement in fully 3 generations. And the United States has a responsibility as a world actor to step up in the same way that Europe does. And, you know, this is something that Scott Walker wasn't prepared to talk about when asked if the United States should accept more Syrian refugees. He said it was a hypothetical consideration. It's not hypothetical. It's very real. And Republicans in particular need to be prepared to talk about this and tell why it is that they think we should or should not. I personally think that we should. I think that the United States has a responsibility to do more to help those in need.
Jeb Bush is your candidate of choice. Do you think he'll get the nomination?
I do. I believe that ultimately he's going to win. He's occupying the same space today that Mitt Romney was 4 years ago. You know, like I said, he's comfortable being the second and third choice candidate right now. We have a field of 15 candidates. There's a lot of options. Those options are going to begin to fall out of contention, and suddenly Jeb Bush is going to rise to the top of the heap.
James, thanks so much. Great to meet you.
Thank you so much, Larry.
I appreciate your time today. I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely.